Hello, good morning in Europe and in Africa, and good afternoon in Japan, because we have actually speakers and people from the audience from Africa, from Europe, and from Japan. And welcome to the workshop on EU-Japan business cooperation in and with Africa. My name is Philippe de Taxis-Dupouet. I am the Managing Director of the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, and also Minister Counselor at the delegation of the European Union to Japan. First of all, I would like to say a few words about what is the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation. It's a joint initiative launched 35 years ago by the European Commission and by the Japanese government, so METI on the Japanese side, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, and the Directorate General from the European Commission dealing with industry, DG GROW. So what we do is we are promoting cooperation between Europe and Japan in terms of industry, trade, investment, innovation, and also people mobility. And we are co-funded by both sides, and the center is co-managed by the EU and the Japanese side. And we have an office in Tokyo, where I am at the moment, and also a branch office in Brussels. Now, you may ask, but why the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation is involved in the EU-Africa Business Forum? And the answer is very simple. There is a clear business trend, and there is a clear business interest for having cooperation between European and Japanese companies for jointly operating in a number of countries in the world, and Africa is certainly one of those continents where this EU-Japan business cooperation is being operated. That's not the only one. There is also Southeast Asia and Latin America, but Africa is certainly of interest. We have documented this business trend over the years with a number of analytical reports, with a number of concrete examples of such EU-Japan business cooperation in Africa or with Africa. And you can actually see all these reports, the conferences, they will be available in the booth that we have during EABF. So you will have all this information available if you are interested. Now what we are trying to promote is very concrete objective, is we are trying to organize business matchmaking, B2Bs, connecting European businesses, Japanese businesses, and African businesses, African stakeholders. And this is what we will do during EABF with specific B2Bs. And again, you can get information about this B2B, which will take place on the 18th of February on our booth. Now, what or with whom do we work? And here I would like to highlight a number of key stakeholders in Europe, Japan, and Africa. And probably the first one is the European Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I'm very pleased to have actually one of the speakers, for instance, Maximilien Lemaire, who can tell us this role that the Eurocham are playing in Africa. And here in Japan, we are very much connected to the French and the German, etc., Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In addition, we are also connected to the so-called EEN members, the Enterprise Europe Network. We are in Japan, the EEN member, and we are connected to the EEN in Europe and also to the EEN in Africa. We also work very much with another key stakeholders, and that is the member states trade promotion organizations, for example, Business France or Business Sweden or ISEX for Spain, etc. So we are working in a Team Europe, approach. Together, we are actually stronger, and we can deliver more and more efficient help to the small and medium enterprises. I forgot to mention that the SMEs are really the sort of companies that we are focusing on. Now, today in the workshop, we will be very lucky to hear from some concrete case of cooperation between Japan, Europe, and Africa. And for sure, that will be a source of inspiration. And if I may ask the speakers and also the audience later on to inform us, to express their views about what are the challenges, what are the opportunities for the EU-Japan business cooperation in Africa, what are the sectors, what are the technological aspects where we are, where we should focus on, where are the needs and where are the problems too. I must say that from the EU and Japan side, there is two partnerships, two main agreements. One is the so-called EU-Japan Green Alliance, which include cooperation between Europe and Japan businesses in other parts of the world, in Africa, it's explicitly mentioned. And we do have also another agreement, the EU-Japan Connectivity Partnership, which is again a way for the European and the Japanese businesses to come together to forge alliances, partnerships, and operate together in a number of countries in the world, including in Africa. I see that my time is almost over, so I just want to highlight one additional final element, which is always important, and that is the financial arm of this EU-Japan business cooperation in Africa and with Africa. And I just wanted to stress that there is a number of MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, between the European Investment Bank and Japanese financial institutions, such as the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, or JICA. And these MOUs are aiming at co-financing projects in the world between Europe and Japan, and certainly also in Africa. I stop here. I think I stick to my 8 minutes for these opening remarks. Many thanks to the speakers, many thanks for the audience, and I pass now the baton to my colleague Fabrizio Mura, who will be the moderator for the next presentation and Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe, for these opening remarks. As Philippe introduced me, I am Fabrizio Mura, currently advising the Managing Director of the EU-Japan Center in Tokyo, from which I am based today, and with which I would like to welcome the audience to our workshop, EU-Japan Business Cooperation in and with Africa, which is structured in two sessions. We will have from now on contributions from 5 speakers that we have invited of relevance to the current topic. And we will then follow that with a panel discussion after the 5 contributions, where audience will have the opportunity to ask questions. So the way we would like to invite the audience to take questions is by going through the question section of your swap card interface. And if you have any questions that you'd like to have asked, please write down your question, and we will select and eventually field it during the panel discussion. So if you have any questions, write it down in the question section of swap card so that we can read it through and field it at the panel. We'd like to kick off today's workshop with our first contributor, who is Damien Duchamp. He is co-founder and head of research at Augmenta, which is an augmented reality startup founded in Finland. Mr. Duchamp, can I give you the floor?
Yes, thank you. So Today I would like to make a short presentation about an interesting adventure we are having with JICA, which is the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. We are building a system based on smart glasses for remote learning between Japan and Africa. Next slide, please. Thank you. So a quick word about Augmenta. We are a small company based in Finland, only 10 employees. We are specialized in industrial software for smart glasses, and our core business is augmented reality and productivity applications. As you can see by the customers we have here on the right, it's not exactly something that you would see in international cooperation setting, but something changed. The way we worked. I think we all know what it is. Next slide, please. It's of course COVID. So for us at Augmenta, it disrupted our traditional customers. These industrial companies had workers that couldn't go to work. They also needed remote solutions, so we started to offer remote collaboration tools. At the same time, JICA had to bring all their Japanese personnel, or many of the Japanese personnel from Africa back to Japan due to COVID. And that means that the international collaboration was basically grinding to a halt. And this was happening at the worst possible time when you have a crisis and you really need international cooperation. Next slide, please. So the traditional tools that we are actually using right now, video conferencing, are way too passive to have a really effective impact when teaching things. The best way to learn, of course, is to do things. So since we're on Valentine's Day, we can make a quick parallel. If you go on a date with someone, you do things together. You just don't talk. You have to do more than that to really learn about the other person. And so JICA knows that well, and they push forward with an international call for proposal that had pretty tough requirements. They wanted a hands-free solution because when you do things, your hands have to be free. It had to be available immediately because COVID was not waiting for us, of course. It had to be easy to use by untrained personnel, and it had to work in poor network conditions. Next slide, please. So Augmenta was selected, and we actually teamed up with Ivory, which is a Belgian smart glass company. And that was a really strong point in our proposal because Ivory has a strong experience in working in Africa. Their hardware and their smart glasses are used, for example, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Another important point for us was that we had visibility in Japan. I do live in Japan. And the EU-Japan Center helped us in the past, so that meant we were on the radar of the stakeholders here in Japan. And altogether, that meant that we had a really good proposal, and we won the call. So as you can see here, the nurse or the doctor is wearing smart glasses. That is a shot from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the smart glasses are not the smart glasses that you're used to see, maybe that do very fancy augmented reality and things like that. I show here a picture of the HoloLens with a red cross on it. It's a great smart glass. It's really awesome, but it's not really fit for the job. What we really need is something with a very easy-to-use interface, and that's why we used Ivory, because they have a system based on a phone, and everybody can use a phone, so it removes the barrier of entry for the people who are going to use it. Next slide, please. So this is a quick view of the project that we had. So we had Augmenta located in Finland, and myself also in Japan. We had institution in Ghana and also 2 institutions in Zambia. The next presenter, actually, Dr. Trangula, will be presenting her point of view from using the system from the University of Zambia. And in Japan, there were, of course, all the Japanese partners, including one that I would like to highlight right now. It's Deloitte Consulting. that many of you may know. And they had actually a very important impact. JICA used them to manage a project and to do part of the call for proposal. And they know Africa very well. They know the international cooperation, they know the Japanese system, they know how things work in Europe. So it was very important to have them on board. Next slide, please. So what are the experience and lessons that we have as a service provider? Well, it was actually smoother than with many of our industrial customers. The legal part was very fast, for example, and with the help of Deloitte, things went fast and quite painlessly. The biggest lesson for us as a technical provider was about the network. It's, of course, an important question when you have such a long distance communications. And we found out that actually the network in Africa can be better than the network in Japan. So what happens is that for one of the projects, the institution on each side could not use the network. And so they decided, okay, we're going to use 4G instead. And we're actually quite alarmed by that because we thought that this would be the end of the project. But the people in Africa and in Japan were confident that it would work. And indeed, it worked very well in Africa. So the network connection in Africa with 4G was really, really good. But from Japan, unfortunately, they picked up a service provider that was not so good, and the quality was actually pretty low. So it was interesting to see that when using these high-tech systems, sometimes the best doesn't come from the most technically advanced country. So the assumptions that we had were actually shattered, and we were very pleased to see that things were working so well in Africa. Another point is that, of course, we gathered quite a lot of feedback, and sometimes the feedback is a bit all over the place, and you wonder, did the people really understand what we were doing there? And I remember one of the feedback we got was that the system was really nice, but it would be better if it worked without network, which for a remote communication system seems like impossible and pointless. But actually, that comment was very, very insightful, because we are not trying to compete with other systems, other network-based systems. We are trying to compete with people actually going there and teaching people on site. And there is, of course, a difference, and there is a little pain not to have somebody next to you and having to use those long-distance collaboration tools. So it's always important not to discard this type of feedback and really see what is said behind the words. Another interesting aspect was regarding the smart glasses themselves. We had the complaints from people in Africa that they were too narrow and that they were painful to use. And the people there said, yes, for us Zambians, we need some bigger glasses, but we immediately told them, well, actually, we have the same problem here. Not myself, because my head is very narrow, but we have some colleagues in Finland who had problems using them. And so the fact that we worked so closely with the manufacturer Iristic meant that we could really get that feedback directly to them, and they will actually take that into account in the next hardware revision of the smart glasses. So the collaboration here is really working in all directions. Everybody's learning something. That was really quite enjoyable. And finally, for anybody who wants to work with Japan and Africa, especially Japan, since I live here, that's what I'm talking about mostly. But you don't have to be here to do good business, but you do need help. And we enjoy the help that we got from the EU Center and other stakeholders, and we look forward to continue with them again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Damien Duchamp, for this very frank and relevant example of technology collaboration in relation to Africa. We stay on this collaboration example And we'd like to invite Dr. Katendi Changula from the School of Veterinary Medicine in the University of Zambia. And we invited Dr. Changula because she has worked together with Augmenta on this project in particular. So, Dr. Changula, could I ask you to zoom in?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'll just talk briefly about our experience with using the smart eyes technology that Damien was just describing in the previous presentation. Next slide, please. So our project is epidemiological research on zoonotic virus infections. This falls under the SATREPS partnership, and the collaborating institutions in Japan, with the principal institution being in the International Institute for Zoonosis Control at Hokkaido University. Then here in Zambia, our faculty is the principal institution, and we also have other collaborating institutions. And then we also work with the Democratic Republic of Congo, with the principal institution being the National Institute of Biomedical Research. Next slide, please. So the objective of our project basically is surveillance of zoonotic viral infections. Zoonoses are diseases that can be transmitted between animals and humans. So we look at developing measures for diagnosis, looking for natural reservoirs, looking for the distribution of these viruses. And the second objective is basically capacity building by collaboration between Hokkaido University and us as a research institute and others within Africa. Next slide, please. So basically just a few examples of the work that we are doing. We're looking at diagnosis of COVID-19 as well as genomic surveillance. So these are papers we published last year. Next slide, please. Another example, looking at zoonotic viruses, they are so wide: avian influenza, filoviruses. We also look at, we discover new viruses. For example, Shuyunji virus is a novel virus that we discovered in Zambia. Next slide, please. And also development of diagnostics. So in this case, we work with industry in Japan. This is Denka Seiken Company, where we develop rapid diagnostic tests. Some are in the pipeline, some are already in use. Next slide, please. So basically, with the aim of discovery, virus discovery, diagnostics, capacity building, and dissemination of the information, we need technical support from our Japanese counterparts, which in the past we have relied on very well. But of course, we then had a challenge. Next slide, please. So of course, we all know that with the COVID-19 pandemic came travel restrictions, and therefore travel between Zambia and Japan became impossible. So we could not have Zambians going over to Japan for laboratory experiments and capacity building. And we could not have our Japanese counterparts coming to Zambia to help with equipment maintenance and also capacity building. Next slide, please. So JICA came up with a solution under their research survey on utilization of STI towards social challenges in sub-Saharan Africa. And this was the Augmenta Smart Eyes technology. So we received three sets of this technology. We have 2 sets here in Zambia and 1 in Japan. And Augmenta provided training sessions, very good feedback, and a lot of technical support. And we are basically using this technology for technical support from our counterparts at Hokkaido University in Japan. Next slide, please. Just a few examples of our technicians wearing the smart glasses. And as you can see in the picture on the right, whatever is being seen by the technicians through the smart glasses is then available to be seen on the screen on the laptop. And in this way, we can interact directly in real time with our counterparts when conducting experiments. Next slide, please. Also here, we can see that apart from being in a stationary, we can also move around with them. We have a technician receiving instructions on equipment maintenance, able to also walk around, show the lab conditions in real time. So this was very helpful to us. Next slide, please. So basically, this technology is able to alleviate some of the challenges that we faced resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. We're able to connect with our Japanese counterparts in real time and carry out the activities that contribute to the achievement of our project objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Changula, for this presentation, highlighting how the technology is being used locally and basically as a way to connect the entire EU-Japan-African team together on the digital landscape. Very interesting project, and I'm sure there'll be questions coming up later at the Q&A moderated session. I would like to move next to invite Nicolas Beckman, who is currently based in Tokyo, Japan, working as senior consultant for Cunier, to take the floor and talk to us about the perspective from Japan regarding trilateral cooperation between the EU, Japan, and Africa. Nicolas?
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone. So today I will be talking as a consultant who has been involved in a significant number of initiatives aiming at promoting EU and Japan business cooperation. And I've been engaging with various business executives from Africa, from EU and from Japan, and I would like here to share with you the most common shared point of view and to try to explain the rationale for increased cooperation among private actors. So let's start. Next slide, please. So, of course, when we talk with our clients from the private sector, in practice, the first question that comes up is the question of cooperation versus competition. And I will start from the point of view of the Japanese companies, and maybe unsurprisingly, Japanese companies surveyed in the JETRO 2020 survey on business conditions identify European companies as competing on the same market segments in Africa. And I should add that this perception is true the other way around to a certain extent. If you had the same survey with European companies, competition with Japan will probably not necessarily be on the top of the list because the presence of Japanese companies in Africa is still somewhat limited. But at first sight, it may seem that some EU companies active in Africa since a long time would like to keep the door shut for Japanese cooperation. But we'll see that it's less and less the case, and we'll try to see the reasons why. Next slide, please. So to come back to the Japanese point of view from the same survey, we can see that the need for cooperation is really fueled by the increased perception that for Japanese companies, the importance of Africa in their global operations is increasing. And on the other hand, there are a certain number of perceived obstacles for Japanese companies doing business in Africa that are really clear when we talk to Japanese executives. That are mainly related to maybe a lack of long-term historical ties or geographic distance, but very clearly the lack of a strong and established local network, the lack also of available manpower with know-how, lack somehow of awareness about good opportunities. And I will add also, and it's certainly the case for some Japanese SMEs and even bigger SMEs, that there is still a relatively high dependency on ODA funding, that there is a reluctance from some Japanese executives to go to Africa and to invest in Africa without the support from the Japanese government. Next slide, please. So it's quite natural in this context that the opportunity to leverage the network of foreign partners from the point of view of Japanese companies is probably the most valuable asset when they do consider this type of cooperation in Africa. And as a matter of fact, we can see on the right side that 66% of the surveyed companies are open to direct cooperation with foreign companies to expand their business in Africa with their African partners. And in the survey, you can feel that there is a prevalence of EU companies in terms of preference that can be explained by a number of reasons. A significant number of Japanese firms handle their business operations in Africa, not all of them obviously, but their business operation, even their market survey in Africa from their European subsidiaries. So there are already established links between EU companies and Japanese companies, and it makes sense to get closer to their European partners. We can talk also about, although very rare, but co-funding opportunities seems to be more plausible between Japanese maybe institutions and European institutions than with other parts of the world, with this Japanese specific emphasis on quality infrastructure, life cycle costs, environment, social and government practice, including transparency, that seem at least on paper to be able to drive projects and to be financially supported by aid agency or financial institution from EU or from Japan. Next slide, please. So to go a little bit quickly, if we take the example of the infrastructure sector, which I believe that could be quite interesting for this type of cooperation, we can find synergies. So from the EU side, obviously, we have historically, high planning, design, and engineering skills for projects in Africa, which is somehow missing in Japan. Same, for expertise in PPP. Lack of the same expertise from Japan, in particular in Africa, a rich European experience in providing legal and financial and accounting consulting fields. I do believe there are plenty of opportunities for consulting cooperation. And from the Japanese side, the interest comes from the Japanese technology. We already talked about the user friendliness and the low life cost technology. The focus on-time delivery, which is not a legend, and a strong expertise in environment, disaster prevention, and safety technology equipment. And of course, I like to mention also the fact that cooperating with Japanese companies, in particular in Africa, can be interesting because it can give you access to large general trading companies, Japanese one, who can really support investments, who can support supply chain, logistic operations, take good offtake agreements that are often necessary to launch projects, and they can also give you access to large Japanese banks for loans or equity or guarantee instruments. Next slide. So lots of potential synergies on paper. In reality, the number of projects and co-funded projects is not that big. And obviously, such a collaboration is not only between two private parties. They are not just bilateral arrangements, of course, and it involves in most of the case African governments. through public procurement or type of concessions and even ODA loans from financial institutions. And so those type of collaboration and consortium agreements that we have seen can be formed really at the demand of African governments, and they will necessarily involve discussion with bilateral agencies. To some extent, and we've seen that with the previous example, JV also are possible for bids on procurement opportunities from bilateral agencies. Even JICA, which seems to be quite inaccessible for some EU companies, provided some eligibility criteria are respected and that the Japanese partner is the prime contractor, but there are still opportunities over here as well for cooperation. But we can see that there seems to be a global political alignment for more cooperation, including in Africa. Today, co-funding options are a bit limited for a lot of technical reasons, application procedures, compliance between banks, but there is a will to move somewhere. There's a political will, but what will move really is creating more and more engagement between African partners, between Japanese partners, and between European partners. And that's why, the initiative of having a platform for a networking and a help desk from the EU-Japan Center is an excellent news, because we do believe that things will move thanks to the involvement and the prime involvement of the private sector. So great initiative, and please register to the event. And next slide, please. So I will be participating in this network. I'll be happy to talk with you. Our company is a business consulting company based out of Tokyo. We do belong to the entity data group, and we have a global branch and offices all over Asia. And if you want to talk about access to procurement opportunities, to MDB's funded projects, to JICA projects, I'll be really happy to discuss. Next slide, please. And that's the final one. Our department really is specialized in those type of cooperation. And in particular, we have developed a support framework for clients to access funding opportunities from bilateral and international financial institutions. So lots of things need to be done. There are opportunities, there are ways to navigate the system, and we're here to help you to be competitive when you bid on projects and when you want to formulate your project. We can connect you with the African public and private sector, to the EU public and private sector, and to the Japanese public and private sector as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this perspective from Japan on EU-Japan-African cooperation. No doubt this will raise a number of questions that we'll have for you at later on the panel discussion. Thank you very much again. Following this presentation, I'd like to ask Mr. Maximilien Lemaire, who is currently President of the European Chamber of Commerce in the Ivory Coast, and is also Vice Chair of the European Business Organizations Worldwide Network, EBOWWN. EBOWWN is an active network of European businesses in Africa with close contact to African industry stakeholders. Due to time constraints, Mr. Lemaire may not be able to join the entire panel discussion, which is why we would like to exceptionally allow some questions immediately after his presentation, if that's okay with the other speakers, and promise that we will not be unreasonably late on the schedule of the overall workshop. Mr. Lemaire?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. First, a small precision. I am not chairman today of Eurocham Abidjan. I am honorary president, but I was a founder of the chamber 12 years ago. So in a few words, can I please ask to revert to the first slide to make the presentation of the EBO network in Africa, if you have it? we have a first slide of EBO network in Africa. If you don't have it, I will just say a word about that. So we have a network in the EBO worldwide network, we have 50 countries where we have Eurochamps. And in these 50 countries, we have today 13 in Africa. It's a growing network. We were only 4 or 5 3 years ago. Now we are 13. In quickly to say, Benin, Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Mali, Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa, Sudan, Tanzania, and Togo. So it's quite diverse. These chambers are mainly direct members chambers, but we have a few of them. I think 4 on the 13 are also chambers of chambers. So the network is growing slowly. I just insist on that because it will be perhaps an instrument for the future collaboration between us to be able to stick to their organization. So some of these chambers are very new and very small, but and they need, of course, to be helped and structured. And Abidjan is playing quite. The Ivory Coast, they have the most structured Eurocham in Africa and is giving quite support in this. The total members or companies which can be reached by this network is over 1,000, of which all the big multinationals originating from Europe. That's just for the presentation. So now, according to let's say the JETRO, that's the next slide. That's perhaps the first slide for you, Mr. Murat. Quote,
yes,
JETRO.
Our team is busy moving around the slides. Bear with us.
No problem. I will give you already small information. So, according, let's say, to JETRO principles, the positions for Japanese companies in Africa is every business approach into African countries requires a parallel political approach, and I will give some explanation on that. And the successful businesses deals are not just linked on the quality of the products, but important who is one is speaking to, and the choice, of course, the local joint ventures partners. And of course, every business plan must include projects to assist civil society through training and education, science and technology development. And that is, I would take, okay, sorry. I think, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Okay, because I have a completely black screen. The main strategic sectors for Japanese investment in Africa are health, education, infrastructure, agro-industry and agriculture, mining, and technology. I will give you an overall example of a very success story and very known by almost everyone who is active in Africa and Japan. That's the big deal of Toyota Tsusho Corporation with the French group CFAO, which has been signed and initiated 7 years ago. So Toyota Tsusho Corporation bought, no, that's already 2012, sorry, about 100%, they acquired 100% of the French group CFAO. CFAO is a big group of distribution active in mobility, automobile industry, health, pharmaceuticals, consumption goods, technologies, and energy. The total turnover of this group is almost 6 billion euros per year, established in 46 countries, that is, and I think now 2 more, but perhaps 48 on the 54 countries of the continent. It's over 21,000 persons. So it is a real success. Why? And for me, that's one of the best examples of how Japanese companies penetrate really on the continent with support of European skills and culture. Because what I feel after 40 years in Africa is, of course, that the knowledge of the cultural and environmental skills from Japanese is not very, very, very high. And so the way that Japanese companies are doing with success is with and through European partners. Because, of course, of history, the Europeans have a quite important knowledge of the culture, of the way of doing, and it is most the key of success of this, for instance, this big deal between Toyota and CFAO Group. Toyota has also projects of assembling cars plants in Nigeria and Ivory Coast, but it's not progressing very well. Companies like Mitsubishi is also dealing with private sector in Africa through a partnership with the Singapore-based Olam. Olam is a quite important Singapore agro industry present in 40 countries in Africa in agro industry. And Mitsubishi owns 20% of Olam and is presently developing projects about carbon credits. Other practical realizations I would keep you informed about two countries. That is, in Ivory Coast, there has been the last years between 2018 and 2022 quite a lot of infrastructure projects financed by the Japanese OCG with counterpart of the Ministry of Infrastructure in Ivory Coast, with a design construction company Dio Corporation. It's to build a quite important bridge, we say in French an échangeur, which is finished now. The first phase is finished. It's a 41.2 million euro project. And I took for this a subcontractor, the French company Razel. Same type of cooperation for another important project which is in the finishing position is the cereal terminal of the port of Abidjan. That's 89.3 million euro project, plus some private investors and public investment in Ivory Coast. So this is this terminal, the terminal of the port, cereal terminal of the port of Abidjan. The construction firm, the Japanese construction firm was TOA Corporation, and they had two big subcontractors. That was the Belgian Jan de Nul for the dredging works, and once again Razel for the civil works. You have other examples also in the health sector, the rehabilitation of university hospital in Abidjan Cocody. That's a 30 million euro project, which has been handed over also to French companies and Italian, a part of them, and also a small grant, what I identified to the printing processing equipment company of the state. In Senegal, you have also quite important projects. The desalination project called Les Mamelles, that is a huge project of over 200 million euro, which is to keep out the salt from the seawater, and to have a big plant to be established with hundreds of kilometers of drinking water pipes, and that is also in progress. And that project is subcontracted mainly to the French Eiffage in Dakar. a smaller project, but interesting also. Quite technology is that's also held by CFAO, this Toyota Tsusho Corporation branch in Senegal, is a plant of producing unsinkable fiberglass canoes, which has been financed through JICA also by Toyota. That is in a few examples I can give you. What can I have as main information or main perception of how Japan EU is progressing in business in Africa? The first thing I would state is it is not so easy to collect information from other countries, the countries I didn't mention, besides Senegal or Ivory Coast. And that's the perception we have, is that is it only from the Japanese authorities or also from the local authorities? Communication about investments, communication from Japan government in Africa is quite few. Is it a voluntary discretion? But the communication is not so high about what Japan is doing in Africa, and that is perhaps an official position, but it's what we state in the most of the country, also in Ivory Coast and in Senegal, for instance. A main topic that we state, which explains the good faith and the good relations between Japanese companies and European, is of course the share we have on good governance. And that is something, of course, which is central. If we compare, sorry to say that, but with China, it is completely different, because Japanese and European, we have the same good governance principles to make our business. And also Chinese, when they come to Africa to execute business, the local counterpart is very, very few. They come with their own people, their own skills, and when they finish, they go back. So there is no intercultural penetration. The joint ventures on the sites, on the fields, I would say, I have no statistics, but we state that there are more joint ventures between Japanese and European-based company than with pure local companies. Okay, that's good for the business between Japan companies, Japanese and Europeans, but I think in the future there should be more involvement also of local companies, with European partners or not, but there are more and more possibilities to have good cooperation with locals. And so globally, I would conclude on this. The acculturation, what we say in French, acculturation. Of course, Japanese do not know so well the continent and the realities as Europeans, and that is, in my opinion, that is a very good way, if I may express it. So sorry to be very harsh, but the best way to learn how to approach the African market is to favor this cooperation with European companies. And of course, I come back to this Toyota deal. That is a perfect example of a wedding with high technology of Japan, good management of human resources through European and Africans, and of course the knowledge of local and environment. So sorry, I had to prepare something more, but I am also involved in the EABF working groups. I have to start in a few minutes, so I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lemaire, for this presentation, highlighting a number of case studies between Europeans and Japanese companies in Africa. We could take one or two questions if that's okay with you. We do have one question from the floor here, and you partly addressed it. So the idea here is that while there's a number of projects involving Europeans and Japanese that you presented, in particularly in Ivory Coast, there was not much comment made about local Ivory Coast suppliers. Could you make a comment on how these local suppliers could be involved, or what requirements would they need to fulfill?
Okay, that's just what I said at the end. We state really that, is it a bit a lack of confidence? I think so. A lack of confidence in local partners. A lack of confidence because they are not very well known by the Japanese companies and authorities. Okay, it's a sensitive question, but in my opinion, that should be increased. Not, I could say that. I say that as a citizen in Ivory Coast or in Africa. I think, of course, very good for our European companies to have big business with Japanese, but we have to increase the local counterpart with local companies because they are becoming better and better. And if I can just say a word about biddings from the state from international banks and so, African Development Bank, now it's required that all the execution of contracts gives minimum 30% of the local content. So I have not the la recette, we say in French, how to do, but we should see together how to convince our Japanese partners and authorities to increase the local parts with local companies.
Thank you very much. That last message was very clear. Thank you. So perhaps in the interest of time, could I close here and thank again Mr. Lemaire for your presentation. All the best for your other contributions in EABF. And I'd like to move on then to our next speaker, who is Georges Musonda, who works at the Energy Platform Limited. We have invited Mr. Musonda to share his experience regarding the importance and development of projects funded by the EU, as well as how to connect, perhaps possibly with clusters from Africa. Mr. Musonda recently participated in one of our best practice workshops on EU-Japan regional cooperation. Mr. Musonda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, my name is George Musonda. I'm the Technical Provincial Officer at Energy Platforms Limited in Zambia. Energy is a private company that is working with smallholder farmers and commercial farmers to establish timber woodrot plantation. The project is co-funded by the European Union through the Enterprise Zambia Challenge, implemented by the Self-Help Africa. Next slide, please. Okay, so to start my presentation, I'm going to look at industrial clusters. So to start my presentation, I'll first start with giving a brief definition of what an industrial cluster is. So an industrial cluster is a group of firms, related economic actors and institutions located in a specific geographical area and has reached a sufficient scale to develop specialized expertise, services, resources, supplies, and skills. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, at this time, I'm going to discuss about the importance of development of industrial clusters in relation to the benefit of the tripartite business cooperation initiative to firms that are participating in clusters. So one of the importance is that developing industrial clusters is that they help companies or firms to take advantage of the market opportunity that they could not achieve alone. And the practical example is a joint venture between Mitsubishi Corporation and Electricity de France in Africa. This partnership actually happened in 2018, where Mitsubishi Corporation wanted to expand its power distribution business in off-grid areas of the sub-Saharan Africa. And in order for it to achieve its objective, it had to partner with a French company, which is Electricity de France, in order to carry out this project in sub-Saharan Africa. The other importance of developing industrial clusters is that industrial clusters, they enable improvement of firms' capacity building by offering intercompany learning, experience sharing, and also technology. You find that companies or firms that are participating in a cluster, they have an opportunity to improve their capacity building. An example is a collaboration between Entity Data and CityBit, also in East Africa, where Entity Data had to collaborate with CityBit to create a citizen engagement platform where they were using social media information as well as big source data to analyze people's emotions and opinions in certain areas using artificial intelligence. So you find that this partnership between the two companies, because of them working together, they had an opportunity to share technologies and also to share experience. That is one of the benefits that we can find from bringing companies together in the form of an industrial cluster. The other importance is that forming industrial clusters, they improve productivity of SMEs, and also they create opportunities for the creation of new products, services, and also funding opportunity. A practical example for this importance is an investment partnership between Marubin Corporation and Azuri Technologies in Africa, particularly in Zambia, Kenya, Uganda, and also Tanzania, where you find that Mitsubishi Corporation had to invest $26 million in Azuri Technologies to produce and distribute solar equipment across Africa. So that is one of also the importance that you find if firms are to be involved in an industrial cluster. The other importance is that industrial clusters, they actually reduce the risks that are involved in launching a new product or carrying out a project or entering a new market. And an example, a practical example that we can give is a collaboration between Toyota, Sushi, and Engie for a wind farm project in Egypt. This happened in 2017. What actually motivated this collaboration is Toyota's financial strength and also Engie's expertise in offshore wind farm project. So we find that the two companies had to partner together in order to carry out this project. Then you find that industrial clusters are able to create networks and know-how for firms to internationalize. These are some of the importances that we can encourage companies that are currently watching us to tell them, say, if you are able to participate in this tripartite business cooperation, these are some of the benefits as a company that you're going to benefit from this cooperation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, at this time, I'm just going to give some of the ways on how clusters or companies can connect from Africa, Europe, and Japan, this tripartite business cooperation. I think from my previous slide, you've observed that most of those companies are European and Japan companies that are working in Africa. You find there are very few companies that are partnering with Europe and also Japan. And the reason is most of the companies in Africa, they lack the information on how they can connect with other European and Japanese companies. And this is one of the ways now companies from Africa can connect with European partners and Japan partners. And one of the ways that the Europe Center for Industrial Cooperation. They've developed a EU-Japan Center Cooperation Help Desk, which provides appropriate information on existing tools and also funding opportunities. The same help desk also supports sorry, just a minute. Okay, it also supports regions, prefectures, and clusters for finding European and Japanese partners. Then the help desk also they conduct seminars, conferences, and skill exchange program. So I'm encouraging companies from Africa as well as Europe and Japan to follow up these programs that are advertised by the EU-Japan Region Cooperation Help Desk. Apart from that, the center has also created a EPA Help Desk and also ITech Cluster Support Center, which also provides support and guides SMEs. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, I'll just go on with the next slide. I think we'll follow up later. So another way in how clusters from Africa can connect with the European companies or Japan companies is also by following the Europe Enterprise Network, which helps businesses to innovate, to grow on an international scale. It's also a world largest support network for SMEs with international ambitions.
Mr. Musonda, we cannot hear you anymore. Can the technical team in the event do something to inform Mr. Musonda that we can't hear him?
Okay. Hello?
Yes, we could not hear you, Mr. Musonda, for about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Could we ask you to continue and perhaps wrap up as well, please?
Okay, all right. So I was just saying that one of the ways in how companies can connect from Africa and Europe and Japan is through following the Europe Enterprise Network, which helps business to innovate and to grow on an international scale. It's the world's largest support network for SMEs with international ambitions. So you can also follow them on their on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also their website for those companies that are interested in finding European and Japanese partners. Thank you. I don't know how much time I had. I did a small video just to show to people that are interested in investing in Zambia in some of the sectors that are open for investment. I don't know if you still have some time. You can play that video. If I don't have, then it's fine. That is on the next slide.
There is time for the video, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. So this is the President of the Republic of Zambia that is calling investment from people. And these are the areas that we have in Zambia. It's the same in Africa. Thank you.
Zambia has a lot of investment opportunities. The country has a lot to offer. We have a conducive environment for business and investment. We have a long-standing reputation for peace and stability. We have a zero tolerance to corruption, which tends to erode business value. Many areas are available for investment in our country. We have vast arable land for agricultural development. We have abundant wildlife and natural resources, natural beauty, including the mighty Victoria Falls. We have a lot of opportunity for investment in the manufacturing sector. We have an export market in addition to our domestic market, which includes 8 neighboring countries with a reasonably substantial population, which provides effective demand. We have vast land, sunlight, and water bodies which allow for green energy investment. We have a diverse mineral base for mining. In particular, we have battery minerals to support the electric vehicle production. We have a government which is committed to good governance. Among our greatest endowments are the people of Zambia, who are warm, welcoming, and indeed hard-working. Zambia offers a lot more. The country is open for business, is open for trade, is open for investment. Zambia right now is the country to go to for investment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musonda, for your presentation and this attractive video of investments in Zambia. So this will conclude our contributors' presentations for the day, and we have a few minutes that we decided would be allocated for questions, and we wanted to take questions from the audience. So let me just jump in immediately to take a question that we received a bit earlier, and this question is directed to Augmenta. So the question is, how would you escalate the technology of Augmenta to improve agriculture production in Africa? As a farmer, I feel very positive about it in monitoring and extension services, but the question is, how would we as farmers get access to this technology in order to promote or to use it? And so I turn myself to Damien Duchamp and perhaps his partner, Dr. Changula, for some answers.
Thank you. Yes, very good question. In fact, in our project with JICA, we had a partner that was working in agricultural application in rice production. So the technology is really there. There is no real barrier in implementing it. In the case of the JICA project, we were using smart glasses because it's particularly useful for remote learning. But in case of monitoring, for example, you may want to use other type of devices, from smartphone to static cameras, which we can also support with our system. So the implementation and the spreading of that technology, I think, will happen very quickly, just like it happened with Zoom and these type of platforms. And there is really no barrier into making that a common asset in your toolbox if you want to monitor, for example, fields or crops in real time. I'm not sure if it answers the questions, but if there's any comment, go ahead.
Thank you. I think this provides a first answer, and if necessary, the inquirer could be encouraged to connect with you later after the event, if that's okay. So I'd like to move to another question that has been on my mind since the beginning of this event, particularly with presentations from Japan. And the question is, how important is it as a prerequisite to have existing connections, either EU-Japan or EU-Africa or even Japan-Africa, in order to increase the chances of securing public or private funds for development projects in the context of Africa? And well, I'd like to ask Nicolas Beckman perhaps to look at this question of preliminary or previously existing connections between partners.
Well, it's a very decisive question, obviously, when you talk about access to finance. and obviously the quality of local partners is one of the criteria that decides if a project is eligible or not for some fund, and the amount of content coming from the local partners is very important. And in that regard, existing existing networks locally are absolutely decisive, and it's quite complicated to create a business case ad hoc for Japanese companies without having surveyed the market and talked to various local partners. So I would say that it's absolutely compulsory to talk and to engage in discussion with local businessmen as much as possible.
Thank you, Nicolas, for this answer. Actually, this question has an immediate follow-up in terms of, or in a particular segment of health. How would you link companies which could potentially partner in the health infrastructure sector? Is there a particular additional requisite on top of course, local regulations that need to be understood and other factors?
But maybe probably for the health sector, Mr. Duchamp will have a more relevant answer than me on that specific sector. I have seen myself really initiatives. JICA is quite involved in Africa in the health sector, and they organize a local workshop, and they organize also networking events from their side. But I'm sure that Mr. Duchamp will confirm this point.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, Mr. Duchamp, your application is for health-related research. So how would you answer this question?
Actually, the application we had with JICA was more in the health and agriculture department, but it's really something that can be applied everywhere. So I don't have a specific insight on the health market itself, but the experience we have with other situations, not necessarily with Africa, but with Japan in particular, is that yes, as Mr. Begman said, absolutely the networking even in the health department is going to be very important. I would add maybe that there will be more institutional or governmental networking that will be required for that. But this is just a personal hunch. I cannot really comment a lot on that topic, unfortunately.
Maybe Mr. Duchamp, adding a question on that, regarding the health aspects of your project, is this something you would delegate to your local partners in the case of Zambia, or would you have any role to play in order to, for example, answer sensitive questions about the role of your technology in helping to deliver or improving health solutions? Is that something you would completely delegate or support or require support from the local partner? Perhaps also we could ask Dr. Changula as well.
I would say maybe Dr. Changula will have a different opinion, but I would definitely say that involving the partners is of paramount importance. Just to deploy the technology, as a small company, we cannot take care of everything. So the best way to do it is to delegate as much as possible to the local partners and let them, propagate the technology, the knowledge and everything locally. That is a lot easier and a lot faster for everyone. So I would definitely favor that, of course, yes.
Dr. Changula, would you like to comment additionally?
Well, just in addition to what Damien has said, we view Augmenta as a tool. So the smart eyes, smart glass technology is just a tool for us to do our work. We use the interface, but at the end of the day, I think leaving it to the locals is the best. We work with them on the technology part, and then whatever it is that we're doing is then in between us who are actually using the technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question from our point of view, the EU-Japan Center here in Tokyo, whose mission is also to support making sure that small and medium companies from either side are part of this tripartite cooperation scheme. And perhaps we could naturally understand that small and medium companies may have it a bit more difficult because of lack of networks, perhaps resources, and as Mr. Le Maire mentioned, they are not well known maybe. So perhaps a bit of a round question for everybody here. What could we do to support the visibility or bring SMEs forward, SMEs that could be interested, and what requirements would these SMEs have? Maybe I can start with Damien. Well, Damien, you're an SME yourself, but you could give us some advice based on what you have attempted in the context of Africa.
So in our case, we were very lucky that we were on the radar of Deloitte and those consultants thanks to our presence in Japan. So because of our presence in Japan and long-term presence, that is something that really helped us. But in general, I think one thing I would really like to see is institutions like JETRO and their European counterpart really talking to each other and in a way merging together, so that a Japanese company could very easily, for example, get in touch with a European company, not by contacting necessarily the EU center, but by contacting JETRO and the people they know locally. And so I think a good discussion and a good collaboration between those large tools, I would say, that can help the SMEs would be really nice, because then, for example, in Finland, we just have to talk with the people we know in Finland, and they can directly give us access to a market in Japan or in Africa or different locations. We don't have to go around and find those contacts everywhere. So that would be something that would be helpful for us.
Thank you very much. May I also have perhaps a quick comment from Nicolas Beckman, the Japanese side as well, to let us know?
Yes, I will really definitely encourage executives and business people to literally talk to their own national agencies. So from Japan, you know, the JICA officers or JETRO officers, and to make themselves very known. And obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done, you know, at the bilateral level between all those institutions, to try to create a platform or a dialogue, not only in terms of networking, but also in making sure that you know, evaluation criteria are aligned, that procurement practices also are aligned, that standards can be also aligned. It works both ways, you know. From the business owner perspective, he has to get as much help as possible, and for Japanese companies, it exists, and it's quite important. And then we'd like to see from the institution level more cooperation, and I'm sure that workshops such as this one will help in that regard.
Thank you very much, Nicolas, for these comments and points. Unfortunately, I'm being told that we are running out of time, and in fact, I'm 2 minutes late. So I'd like to apologize, and I'd like to also thank our contributors and the questions asked by the audience for this panel discussion, and immediately invite our coordinator from the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, Florence Arnoux, to give a few words of closing remarks. Florence?
So it seems that I was disconnected. So I would like to invite the audience to join our virtual booth to meet us and to discuss with us about the topic of EU-Japan business cooperation in and with Africa. If you have any other questions, please visit our virtual booth. Okay. And also, we are organizing the B2B matchmaking for EU, African, and Japanese companies interested in bilateral business cooperation in Africa. And you will find information in our virtual booth. It's taking place on Friday, the 18th of February. And companies from the EU, Japan, and Africa are welcome to join and register to try to find new business partners for bilateral joint projects in Africa. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. I am providing an email address for you to contact us. Otherwise, please visit our booth. And I would like now to give the floor to our director, the General Manager of the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, Philippe Duchamp, who will present you a new initiative at the EU-Japan Center.
Thank you, Florence. So now I would like to officially launch the help desk, a new dedicated help desk for EU-Japan business cooperation in and with Africa. And I would like to stress the in and with, as it was mentioned several times by speakers. What we are trying to put in place is tripartite or tripartite cooperation between EU, Japan, and Africa. So basically, this help desk will have obviously the function of enabling the stakeholders in Europe, in Japan, and in Africa to get to know each other. It will also identify opportunities for them. It might be public procurement opportunities, technological opportunities, business opportunities, standards and norms opportunities, regulatory cooperation opportunities, etc. And also identify the challenges, the problems, because we should not ignore that sometimes it might be difficult. So let's face those challenges and identify them as clearly as possible. The help desk will also list the existing tools which are there today in Japan, in Europe, in Africa to exploit those opportunities and to some extent solve the problems. And last but not least, the help desk will also highlight the existing business cases of cooperation between Europe, Japan, and Africa, because those existing concrete cases are a source of inspiration, sometimes model for other companies to step in. I also would like to stress that this help desk will not be a sort of isolated standalone action. It will be strongly connected to the other tools that we do have at the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation. Let me mention maybe some of them. The tools related to cluster cooperation, which is so important because the companies, in particular the SMEs, are hosted by those industrial clusters, the technology transfer help desk, and also the public procurement help desk that we have. And obviously, as I mentioned, and it was also mentioned by several speakers, we will strongly connect this help desk to the Enterprise Europe Network, to the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, and to the networks of European Chamber of Commerce and Industry. To finish, I just want to launch maybe an idea for the future. You may know that we have between Europe and Japan the so-called EU-Japan Business Roundtable with several working groups and annual meetings and preparing recommendations. Maybe an idea for the future would be to put in place an EU-Japan-Africa Business Roundtable. with this idea, I would like to thank all the speakers, all the audience, and many thanks for these constructive and very interesting presentations. And I understand that this workshop has been recorded, and the recording will be available later on, including the slides presented. Thank you again for your attention.